Hi, and welcome to another taking of life with the word, and in particular with Jeremiah 17 verse 9, where it says that the mind is a wicked, deceitful, I can't even say thing. Who can understand it? And what I was going to look at in particular today, is the way us women have children. Especially looking at why some young girls had children very young. What's behind it? What's the desire? What's the expectation? What is it? And also considering Proverbs 22 verse 6, which I think makes so much the difference in how we raise our children. Because what I've noticed, even in my own family, who was not they were not Christians, they were Catholics, but those, the people who just do the rites, they don't care what God says. They just, they know that when you're a certain age, you have to go through the rites, and they take you and be baptized, then they'll take you again to do communion and the other one again that you have when they're a bit bigger. So they would just do these things because it was socially acceptable, but they did not feel that God was someone real who they had to answer to. Coming from that, we also do see a lot of Christians now who, they think they are Christians, and they look at the Bible when it says, train your child. What they do, they just tell their children. And I've done it myself when I first became a Christian, because to be honest, I was, teaching them Bible principles, but then the way I was actually living my life was very different. I was always in a hurry. I was angry most of the time with our father, who wasn't there, and so I would be impatient with them, always hushing them around and scolding them for getting dirty and doing stuff. I would buy them loads of toys, but then children, they really need tranquility. Then they need a nice environment where they can relax. I was always in a hurry. I always had something to do. Even everything that concerned my spiritual life was yet another thing that I was dragging them into, going to church. Then I was doing Bible studies, and I was doing everything really out of with that same spirit of just busyness, and it didn't turn out good. So I think what happens a lot, we tell them what to do, we don't train them. To train someone means that you are showing them what they have to do, and then you give them the opportunity to do it with you, or do it in front of you until they get it right. That's training. When you go down the gym, they don't just bark orders at you and then they go off to see someone else. Not in a good gym anyway. But what we do with the children sometimes, we just tell them, it's like this, it's like that, and then we rush off onto something else, like we might read in the Bible, honor your father and mother, and we remind them of that. But then there's also another verse in the Bible that says, don't wind your children up. When you discipline them, do it in a way that's not out of anger, out of suffering, but you should be doing it like a just judge, and that's very, very rare. Most of the times, as parents, when we discipline our children, it's because we've had enough, we can't take another minute, and then we explode into anger. So, or what happens to a lot of people, they have suffered traumas, and they pass them onto their children. They pass them onto the children. They just teach like the way they behave in front of the children. That's how they're really training them, yeah? When they're in difficulty, when there is an argument, they react in a certain way. So even they tell their children, don't do this and do that, don't do that. What they're training the children to do is exactly what they're doing, which could be seeing parents getting very angry with one another, even, throwing things about, using terrible words, promising vengeance and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe then after that you tell them, behave, go to school, don't be rude, obey your superiors, blah, blah, blah. But then inside the house, they don't see that happen. They don't see respect. They don't see obedience. They see vengeance, heartbreak. They see, and I believe that has got a lot to do then with the way children value life so little in the Western world today. I'm so glad I've actually seen testimonies of guys that, while they were in prison for being gang members and stabbing people and doing all sorts of bad stuff, they come to know God, and now they come out, they actually ministering to other young people, young men, to show them that there is something, they can have a community, they can have friends, they can have something outside the family which is not necessarily has to be among them. Also, I think there are men who work with these children and, try to, they get these children to understand the root of their problem, why, life is so, has such little value to them, why they don't have any self-esteem, any self-love, and why they don't have any good expectations in life. Even though I do understand that the society we're living in at the moment makes it very hard for us to envision a future when we can be successful, when there is justice, equality, where you want to, be honest, because the way that things are doing now, they've been doing now for like the past 20 years, I think, is just taxing people who work and raising the price of everything, not the wages. Basically, children's rights are totally, set aside, and the rights of the adult, even the criminal adult, the rights of a criminal adult are superior to the rights of an abused child. So much that when a criminal is caught for committing rape or murder of a child, once he's in court, the law worries about his family and the effects that him being in prison is going to have on his family. They don't worry about the effects that the death or rape of that child is having on his family. No. The way the law is working now, it's all about that criminal, and then they're to take into account where it comes from. If it's coming from a place in the world where children have no rights anyway, so it's a bit of like his cultural identity. So they had to consider that as well. So basically, society and the legal system is supporting the criminals more than is supporting the victims. That is the reality. So even for a young person, when he's looking at the environment he's in, the law in itself is not much of a threat to committing crime. For someone that hasn't got that much of expectation in life, he knows that if he's underage and he's selling drugs, they can't do too much to him because until you're underage. And even the pushers, that's why they employ them, because they realize that they're saving so much money on lawyers and everything, because being underage, these guys, they don't even have to send lawyers to go after them. You know, the system itself will provide, will cover them, will protect them because they're underage. So the whole system is making it easier to thrive doing bad rather than doing good. Yeah. If you want to study, you have to pay. If you want to go to uni, you must have money, right? But then if you just come over in a boat and say you're running away from God knows where, then you get all kind of help to settle, to have accommodation, to have a phone, to go to a doctor. You can very easily get a status of, being able to remain in Europe despite maybe being a criminal, and you will get it easier than legal immigrants who've been in the West and then have been working. They even have jobs, but when time comes to renew their work visa, they get more problems than somebody that comes in who you don't really even know, a man coming from, countries where there's war and where the culture is that children and women are just objects, basically. So these people, they are helped in any possible way to gain status to remain in our countries. And the legal migrants who have worked to prove to their heart, they've been paying taxes, they have children in Europe who grow up here and still they have to live with these nightmare of renewing the papers. Will they get their papers renewed? Imagine being born in Europe and then you get to a certain age and you're threatened with having to go back to a country that you never even lived in, just because your parents come from that country. Now, you tell me how that can make someone feel safe and serene and growing up and trying to be an achiever, while even if they say they're very good at school, they're still threatened to be sent back to a country they don't even know just because their parents came from that country. What people who don't even speak a word of English, who want Sharia law, and they basically just want to come over to the West to turn into an Islamic regime, they get all the advantage, all the help, all the opportunities. Now, this is very hard for a young person to accept. It is very hard even for an old person like me, because it doesn't just make any sense. Yeah, you're rewarding crime, you're rewarding dishonesty, you're rewarding violence, and you are making it very hard for honest people to be successful. Then you have the taxes and everything. But that is another story, how to be achievers in a society that's working against you, how to still want to build in a place that's just dismantling everything that you've ever known and believed in. That is another story, and we'll get there eventually. But today, I wanted to speak about having children, about when the mind is dysfunctional, yeah? Because only a dysfunctional mind, and I tell you, I was exactly like that, could look around and see a multitude of fatherless children and single mothers struggling, and sometimes even going from one relationship to another and bringing the children from the previous relationship into another, or maybe just seeing a man who is married and has children with someone else, and that relationship is not over, or that the relationship is over and you don't bother to ask yourself, why is it over? Could it be his fault? No, you want that relationship to happen so badly that you don't ask too many questions. You just go dive into it, right? And why do we do that? Why do we do that? I mean, we have the evidence all around us, but we don't want to see it. Why? What kind of emotional emptiness do we carry? I believe some women, they just want to be provided for. And sometimes, they get pregnant when they're very, very young, just because they don't feel they have a family. They want to make their own. I mean, I went through that kind of process. To me, having children was creating the family which I didn't feel I've had. I was an only child, and I wanted to have many children, for example. So, we go chasing a dream in a very shallow way without, the Bible says that before you're doing anything, you should count the cost. But for some reason, so many young women don't count the cost. They just go in it, believing that it's going to be different for them. It's going to be different for them. They just believe, it doesn't matter what I've been told, doesn't matter what I see, doesn't matter everything that's happening around me. It will work out for me. That's the same kind of reasoning that I did when I started taking drugs. And everybody said to me, look, you start touching that stuff, you get addicted. But still, I thought, no, not me. Not me. I'm going to be one of those few who can take drugs here and there and just leave it when they want to. And that's the same thing that happened when I got into these relationships where then I became pregnant. And of course, this relationship didn't work out. The men were not committed. They had even more problems than me. And I was left alone with the children, and with a certain amount of anger as well, and of hurt. But I still really believed that, I had created my own family. Now I had my own children. So, I believed I was better off than before. Until, of course, these children grow up, and then they don't respect you, and they don't even want to be around you. They just want to go off and find their own families, just as you did. So obviously there's something that's not working. Something is not working in this mechanism, right? So basically, it would be true to say that so many times women have children out of selfishness, because at least that's how it was for me. I thought that my children would definitely love me. Maybe man had not loved me, my own family had not loved me in the way that I needed to be loved. And I believe that my children loved me when they were small, but they probably loved me in their own way, and they still love me now in their own way, which is not what I'm expecting from them. But now I've learned that you cannot use people. You cannot use people to fulfill that void that you carry inside. You cannot use other people's lives to fix your life. When I stopped taking drugs, I fought in my own sick head, sick in the way that it wasn't working properly, that by having a family, I would have filled that void. It didn't happen. It didn't work out. I was somebody that was damaged inside. I had traumas. I had anger. I had so many issues, and I just carried them into this new dream, the family dream. And when you're not well, you tend to attract people who are not well. So basically, it's going to be very rare that your dream is going to work out, because you are starting. It's like saying, you come out of hospital, you're sick, and just because you fall in love with somebody, you think that love is going to heal your sickness. It doesn't work that way. If you're sick, your way that you love people is not going to be healthy anyway. If you're hurt, if you've been damaged, you're not going to be able to love in a healthy way, not even your own children. The world is full of people who have had children, whether taking drugs, whether were on on alcohol, or people who simply live the crazy lifestyle. They had children, whether they were just seeing all kinds of different people. They don't even know whose their children are, because they had multiple relationships all at the same time. Then they get pregnant, they don't even know whose baby it is. And they just carry on and just, keep messing it up. And then they go into another relationship, have another child from that one. And they're just dragging the children along into what is their thing in life, Well, that is not the way to have children. When you have children, really, you should be kind of dedicated, like saying, now I'm going to devote myself, at least for a certain amount of years, to the well-being of my children. And that might require even you being alone. If you've had your problems, nice time that you deal with your problems and leave man out of it until you're healed. And just think about your children, because whatever problems you have, you're not going to find a solution by bringing your problems into another relationship where you're going to find maybe someone who's got problems as well. So then he's going to bring his own problems into the relationship. And who's going to suffer the most is the babies, the children. Why am I saying all this? Is because I wish for a lot of women out there to just stop these mad rush of running from one relationship to the other, thinking they're going to get fulfilled, thinking that if they only could find somebody that loves them, everything's going to be all right. It doesn't work like that. You'll be running and seeking and searching your whole life and damaging a lot of people along the way. Your children the most, I tell you, because I've done it. I thank God that when I start following Jesus Christ and spending time in his word and having people who actually get a lot of revelation, because it's one thing to be a Christian and to have a Bible and just read it, and another thing is to spend time in God's presence, to pray and to study it and to listen to good advice. As someone else that's been through stuff is telling you, look, that way that you're going, it's not profitable, it's going to hurt you, it's going to hurt everybody else. We should have the wisdom to listen to good counsel, to good advice. So I really wish that us women, would consider having children in a different way. And let's not go into the abortion now, because that's another thing which, honestly, I'm going to go into that today. But that's another act of evil selfishness, because at least when you have your children, if you can't cope, they can be adopted. I know a lot of people that have had a good life being adopted. I know a lot of people who were not aborted, they haven't had the best life, but they're still very glad to be alive. But once you're aborted, you don't have a saying. Your life is over, right? So I would rather that there was a compulsory thing for people who live a crazy life to have their tubes tied. Then if you change your mind, go and try and have them untied later on in life. What can I say? If you change your mind, go and adopt, But if you're going to live a crazy life, you can't just keep producing children. And you can't even keep killing children. So it's not good for people who off their nuts to have children, and it's not even good for people to just kill children because they don't want to be responsible for what they're doing with their sex life. And let's not bring rape into it, which is 2%. 2% of abortions are from rape. So let's just be more accountable. Let's get healed. Let's go for therapy. If you don't believe in God, go and get therapy. If you don't want to do anything about it, take contraceptives. They are free. Have your tubes tied if you're so out of it that you can't even remember to take your pill. There are so many ways that we can avoid spreading hurt and pain on this earth. So that is it for today about, this issue of having children just to fulfill the emptiness that we have inside. And I tell you, I was there. I've done it. So I'm not judging. I'm just advocating for these children. I've become the children's advocate. And another thing that would be very interesting to go into is why these very young girls, 12, 13, they sexualize themselves so much. We're wearing loads of makeup and skimpy clothes. What is making them feel that that's how they should be seen? What is going through their minds that's making them think that that's how they want to be seen by men, by boys? And let's remember, maybe you're doing it for the boys, but people out there that's watching you, it's grown men as well. So what is going through their minds? I'd be so interested in knowing what's going through our children's minds, our little girls who are just so easily falling prey of rapists, of pedophiles. Why is this not scary enough for them to go into these vape shops, to allow these people to talk to them, to allow these people to give them lifts? Why are they not fearing for their lives? Once again, the same as with the boys. Why don't they value their lives enough to try to be as safe as possible? And this is something that only they can say. And I hope that we'll be able to put together a panel where, right now I can't do it in person unless somebody's going to set it up. I'll be willing to travel. But otherwise, just do it an online thing. And girls, if you don't want to be recognized, fair enough, you can wear a mask. And just so that you can be honest and we can really go deep into what's going on, find the roots, of why lives are what they are for so many young people now. Why so many young girls, they will kill themselves, starving themselves to death. Why do we have women who are addicted to sex and they just, they are a slave to their own sexual organs, to their whole body. I mean, their bodies decides for them. Why are these things happening? What is the thing behind it? What is the root of the problem? Why is sex become such an obsession for women as well? It used to be for the guys, but now I think for some girls it's even stronger. As I was looking at my sons when they were going to school at a very young age, girls were sexually active sometimes before the boys. When the boys were still enjoying just playing around silly games, there was little girls that were already seeking to kiss, seeking to do, like to have some kind of interaction, physical interaction with the boys, which they, when boys are young, they always say that's disgusting. When the boys are very small, if a woman goes near them, and to see these young girls already with their minds onto these things, it just makes you wonder, surely they got it from somewhere. And what is being taught in our homes? What are they picking up from us women? That they just want to portray themselves and, have that kind of engaging with other people based on looks, based on sexuality. Why is that become like a visitation card now? What is going on? It'd be very interesting to know, and I hope we get a chance to talk very soon. I don't want to talk with the experts. I want to talk with the kids. And by the grace of God, I pray I'll be able to do this very soon. Honestly, even though I believe in God, I don't expect the participants to believe in God. This is really a topic that touches everyone and anyone. So hopefully we'll be able to set this thing up soon. In the meantime, I send you all my love and God bless you.